shoes off, Colette. And thank you.
Okay. So
Hi,
we're
Max.
live, aren't we?
Yeah, we're live today. Today's a little different.
Where are you at, June?
Today we're outside. We're doing time outside the fence with June and
Yeah,
Max.
I'll tell them that part. You just tell me where you're at.
I'm
I got it.
outside the
Yeah.
I'm outside the detention facility of ICE in Aurora.
Aurora.
Uh,
And
so this
yeah.
in this detention facility, the immigration activist Jeanette was illegally arrested. She was illegally surveilled for a few days, illegally arrested and illegally detained.
Okay.
A
All right. Why don't
judge.
you take a pause right there and then we'll try to dig into all that. That's like a lot. So we might want to introduce ourselves. I'm Max and this is June. So we got doing time outside the fence and I don't see a fence there, but there's probably a fence nearby. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you are pair up side by side. Yeah.
there is definitely a barbed wire fence here. It's just that where I'm at right now, you can't see it, but further in and in different areas of this
You're at the
facility.
entrance. Are you at the entrance?
I'm on the side entrance. There are two separate entrances in this facility. This is the second entrance. The main
Uh-huh.
entrance is a little bit more secured with a gate and everything. There's a gate down there, so that's the second entrance. And there is barbed wire on the fence here.
Very proud.
So this is a ICE immigration detention facility,
That's
which
the
is
Aurora one, right?
privately owned by a company called GEO Group. GEO
Mhm.
Group and a lot of the different ICE detention facilities are experiencing human rights violations and inhumane treatment.
Uh-huh.
Especially the Miami one.
The
The
Miami one.
Chrome
What's happening in Miami?
the Chrome facility in Miami, what's happening there is that it's meant for to detain 400 humans,
Mm-hmm.
and they're detaining over 4,000.
4,000. Where
Yeah,
are they
and it's
keeping
only meant
everybody? It,
sleeping on the floors, practically touching each other. People
cots.
are getting one
Yeah,
meal a day. Four people have died. There's an illness that's spreading among the detainees
sure.
in
Mhm.
Miami. They're not allowed to use the restroom, so they're urinating and defecating on themselves and on the surfaces there wherever they can. People don't have beds. They're sleeping on the floor next to each other.
Huh.
And they're given 1 cup of water a day.
Okay. And how do you know this? Is there a network of people or is this on the
What
news?
what happened is that someone snuck in a phone, so a
Hmm.
contraband phone was snuck in the facility, and
Hmm.
one of the detainees started recording
Hmm.
without the officials knowing that they were recording. They started uploading videos on TikTok,
Hmm.
asking for help and asking for human rights coalition groups to help assist them. And yeah, so basically, illegal phone made it inside a facility, and thanks to
Hmm.
that, it created an awareness where, and it's not just happening in Miami. There's a lot of detention facilities where
Hmm.
people are complaining about mistreatment from guards, where there have been people that have been detained for 8 months, 10 months, 2 years, 3 years without getting due process or any type of updates of their
So you
status.
mean they haven't had a trial? Now,
Yeah.
because you were talking about Jeanette, right? She was illegally detained, you said, and how come she was legally detained?
So she was being surveilled illegally without a warrant or anything. She was also arrested
Mhm.
illegally. There was no warrant for her arrest. There was
Mm.
no deportation order. Nothing had changed in her legal case. So the thing is that this current
They were
Trump
going to
administration.
move her, weren't they? And then they had a court date about this, is what I
They were
heard,
trying
or you
to
told
express
me.
support her. Yeah, they tried to express support her, and a judge ordered a halt on all deportation.
Hmm.
She had her hearing
Where was
on
was that in
March.
Colorado at the
Yeah,
federal up in Denver?
yeah, in Denver, she had a hearing with the judge, and it was in the state capitol. And her lawyers filed, I don't know exactly what they filed. I'll put it in the comments,
Yeah.
but they filed a motion basically stating that the arrest was illegal, that they weren't following process, and that she was targeted, that her First Amendment was violated for free speech. The reason why Jeanette was targeted is Jeanette Vizqueza is a very strong immigration, human rights, and labor activist. And she was starting, she's a really great community gatherer, and she's well known on an international level, and she was planning on future protest rallies, a silent auction, community meetings. And I had a meeting with her on Friday.
What were these about? What were they?
The
what was she-
community meetings never started. They were
What were
going
they?
to start.
To protest this? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So the meetings, the community meetings that she was recording with me about, we were recording live on social media to try to let the community know that community meetings were going to start that Friday.
Yeah.
And that we were going to, you know, plan and figure out creative solutions to these problems and plan future protests and rallies and events. And so that I met with her on a Friday, and then the next Monday she was illegally detained. And it's been a target that this current administration has been targeting immigration activists and community leaders. I think in California, or I don't remember what state.
Yeah.
A farmer that is a community activist. He was illegally arrested as well. And it's happening all over the country where they're arresting community leaders for their political activism, which, you know, political
Well, not
activism.
even leaders, people who just speak up, right?
Yep.
I mean, you don't even have to be a leader like Jeanette for this to happen.
You will win.
I
You just got
understand, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's rather scary that, you know, there's always been resistance in this government, and there's always been freedom of speech, and that's always been protected in our country. And to see it actively being stripped away, taken away, that people aren't having due process to legal matters, that is highly illegal. It's anti-constitutional. It's against our Bill of Rights. It's against our Constitution. And the community needs to fight back and say, we're not okay with this, and we will not be silent.
In what way do they need to fight back?
Does that
peacefully, legally? Because
in what ways would we want to do that? Because you all meet there often? Like protesting is one way of doing that, right?
Yeah, protesting is one way. Recording videos, sharing news information is another way that you can inform the community. You could also write to your legislators in the Senate and the Congress. Like, you have a voice and you can use it. Our voices are powerful, and the more that we use them, the more power for the people. Another way that you could peacefully resist is read banned books, educate yourself. Stand up for people's rights. So if you know someone who's being detained, try to visit them, try to inquire about them, try to spread the information about their case on social media.
Right.
But I just want to make sure to encourage the community that we need to resist and push back and fight back. But when I say the words fight back, I don't mean using violence.
No, of course not.
I don't support like the
No,
test.
I wouldn't let it go if that was happening. We try to be nonviolent, right? That doesn't mean that violence can't happen, but we're trying to be nonviolent. Yeah. So what does that mean to be a nonviolent protester?
Not violent. I don't support the violent protesting because it discredits peaceful movements, and it makes it allows the government to be able to mobilize law enforcement and military against civilians, and that's not what we want. We also don't want the government to use any excuse to engage martial law.
Right.
because that's also a threat to democracy. So
Mhm.
that's why these protests need to remain peaceful, civil, and sane and
Has there
respectful.
been
Because
any violence here at this protest?
no, not. I've been, so this is, they've been meeting at the ICE detention facility in Aurora every Monday, after 5:30, ever since, the week after Jeanette Vizquerra has been detained. They've all been peaceful protests. The very first one that happened, though, there was an elderly woman who was indigenous burning sage outside the facility. And because she was burning sage and it was a fire hazard, law enforcement got involved. They tried to arrest the elderly woman, and she was
Who did? The
actually
Aurora
put.
police did that?
Yeah, the Aurora Police Department had her in a squad car, but they released the woman because all the protesters were resisting that woman's arrest and trying to advocate for her, stating that she
You
was
mean you
not
were
a threat
talking
to
to
the
the
facility,
officers?
that she wasn't trying to
Right.
burn
Hmm.
anything, that she was just performing a Native Indigenous ritual, which
Right.
is the sage burning.
Hmm.
And I think that they understood that, and I think that they're not trying to mobilize the police against us. I feel like the Aurora Police Department works really well with the community versus other law enforcement agencies.
Hmm.
But yeah, they released the woman from the back of the squad car, and that was the first time. I have the police were here today briefly for a little while. I'm
Hmm.
not sure exactly why they were present, but all of a sudden I saw the cop light squad car, and I saw some ICE officials that came outside, and they were outside for probably 20 minutes, but nothing's happened. Like, no
Hmm.
one destroyed property or vandalized any of the vehicles or given any threatening messages to employees here. So it's been very civil and very legal.
Huh. So you are on their property now, or are you on the city part?
Just because if it's too.
I'm on city property right now because I'm currently on the sidewalk on the other side of the street. But earlier, the reason I hopped on the other side of the street was so that I could hear you, because over there
It's
with the
pretty
crowded.
loud. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty loud. Yeah.
and it looks like a small group. It's about, I'd say, probably 50 people minimum.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people when you look at it. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's up to us.
I just
'Cause
hopped
it,
on the other side of the street so I could actually hear you talk and you could hear me.
yeah, yeah. So it hasn't been no police involvement other than sometimes they have police presence to let people know that they're around.
Yeah,
So I don't know their intention, but I know that when I worked in corrections, sometimes you just have people around so that they know. So, but that doesn't mean that you would become violent, but yeah,
yeah,
sometimes
no,
it's the
and I
other
don't
way.
think
Yeah.
I don't think Aurora Police Department views this as a threat. In the past, there have been ICE detention protests outside this facility in the past, that like back in 2017, 2019 era.
Yeah.
Jeanette Vizquerra was rallying the community to come here for protests.
Hmm.
And she actually started the Abolish ICE movement of Denver.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so she also established a camp outside of this facility in the past. So she and other protesters
You mean
actually
like
set up.
over in the park there?
Yeah, like they had set up a camp out here.
Oh,
They
wow.
were camping outside this facility protesting, and that was years ago before. And now it's 2022, or sorry, 2025.
2025. You lost
But
track.
like
It's
back
been a
in
long day, maybe. Yeah.
but back in the past, like Jeanette has been advocating for the human rights of the people that are detained, and now she's one of the detainees in here.
I know. Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you that
So
And I think
that
it
one
goes
we
to
can hear really well.
why we should be taking today off in honor of,
I think
Yeah.
it goes to show that,
because today the city and county of Denver
never think that something can't happen to you.
Right.
You know, the quickest way for you to lose your civil rights and your human rights is when other people's rights are being taken away. Staying silent and not advocating for their rights is the quickest way for eventually you to lose your rights as well. And that's what we're seeing with this current administration, where human rights are being violated, legal due process rights are being violated.
And turn them over to
A lot of civil rights are being stripped away, and it feels like an erasure
What kind of civil rights are
Black and
taken
Indigenous
away?
history being erased. Well, I mean, now there was a law that prohibited facilities from being able to segregate, and that law was removed. So now, if a facility wants to segregate themselves from any community, they can.
What do you mean by segregate? You
So
mean
back in the
by ethnic background, or how
by
does that?
whatever.
I don't know what that
Because-
really means inside, because I imagine there's a number of different ethnic groups in there.
Well, I mean, say if you were a business owner and didn't want to serve to Muslim people, you could refuse service to Muslim people now. Or say I'm anti-Jew, I'm anti-Semitic, and I'm against the Jewish people because I'm a Nazi lover. Then I could literally say, no Jews allowed.
No Jews
or no
allowed
Black
where?
people.
Where at? In the facility or somewhere else?
I'm talking about, so there used to be a law that prohibited facilities, government facilities and business owners to be able to, that they could not segregate their facilities. That Trump administration removed that protection. So that kind of feels kind of like like the Jim Crow law area, like the Jim Crow laws in the past where segregation was allowed. And it's an echo of the past that we're not okay with. The Ku Klux Klan is having a mass rally in a state coming up soon in April, I
Here
believe.
in Colorado?
No, it's a different state.
Okay.
I don't remember
Yeah,
what
yeah.
state.
Mhm.
But it's just really concerning because we're seeing a rise of Nazism and fascism, and we're not okay with that because there's also
Where are
seeming,
those? Where are the Nazi things coming up that they are
on
talking
social
about?
media, people are throwing like
Okay.
Nazi salutes and wearing swastikas,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, I've seen a few things. I mean, there's some big things like Elon Musk and Steve Bannon, of course, but then I know that there was a little thing about somebody wanting to put a swastika on a knife, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
And it's just distressing too because like on the government websites, they're erasing history about Black history and Indigenous and brown
Okay,
people's
yeah.
history and achievements.
Right. Mhm.
And it's just, we won't be silenced. We won't be erased. And Max, I just wanted to let you know my battery's at 2% right now.
Uh-oh, are you going to go off? How am I going to
so-
continue if you're not here? You're the
I'm
one
gonna
live
go
on the
off.
floor,
I'm
on the
going to
ground.
go off, but if you want to
Yeah, you
talk
better
about
go.
these topics that I was mentioning, feel free to continue your recording.
Yeah, I'll
I'm
record
at 1%
for a little bit.
now.
It's okay. You need to go. Yeah, you need to
Yeah,
keep your
bye,
phone.
Max.
Okay,
Thank you for your
bye.
time. Bye.
All right, see you. Take care.
See ya.
And I was
Okay,
saying,
bye.
I wrap up because I got a chance to get on it.
So that was June, and she was at the ICE facility in Aurora talking about related issues. Of course, there's so many things related beyond just Jeanette's being incarcerated there that she was bringing up towards the end. And she was fighting her battery, which is always a fear whenever we're on the phone and on a Zoom call. It seems to suck up all that battery really fast. So so June was talking about, I mean, I probably do not have the extensive information that she does, but we do know that she was talking about segregation, and I think what she was referring to, and she can clarify this in the recording, is what do we do with the on the websites and so on. I didn't quite know what she meant by the others, but hopefully she'll make some posts about what was going on with the segregation, because it sounded like there was some of that going on in the facilities. Of course, people can be refused service, it sounds like now. So that and the museum, the Smithsonian Museum, I think was affected by that some of the what they might call woke history by MAGA people and other folks who have talked about that cancel culture and things like that. I've been reading about as Steve Bannon. Well, there was a protest out at the Phil Long Boot Barn where Steve Bannon hosted the state GOP, or didn't host it, but he was the speaker at the GOP, and it was being held there. And then there were some comments, and apparently, I don't want to go too off topic though with things like that, but I think that's what she was referring to. Maybe she can clarify that. When we're when she edits and puts those in the links. She usually does a wonderful job at that. Obviously, it was very loud, and they were certainly being heard, which is wonderful. And that there's 50 people on a Monday evening outside the ICE facility. What does this have to do with incarceration? It's probably clear to most of us, but just in case, it was kind of like we weren't able to meet earlier, so she was headed over to the protest. So she said, "Do you want to film from the facility?" And or by the facility actually by the protest. So I said, "Why don't we do that?" So yeah, and I just let her know a little bit ago because I had appointments, I had clients this afternoon. So so let's see what else do we have going on there. There's so many issues related to this. And I did a little bit of research about that beforehand. Some of the concerns, of course, are things like, there was just details that, that she was hitting upon, but hygiene and sanitation issues. She certainly talked about the Miami facility where they're not able to go to the restroom or the bathroom there, that people are urinating and defecating on themselves. And so food and water, there were some pictures that they were getting like 3 slices of bread, a thing of, carton of milk, some jam, no protein except in the milk, and I think maybe a piece of fruit like an apple. So I don't know if that's changed, but obviously there are different things happening in different facilities. The food and water, shelter, and living conditions. Obviously, they're overcrowded in some of these places. We don't know if Jeanette is facing that. Healthcare, obviously, she mentioned that 4 people had died in the facility in Miami. I don't know what the source was, but hopefully June can put that into the links. And then reports of allegations of mistreatment and abuse. I'm not sure. I mean, there's different kinds of abuse that can happen in a facility like that. Unfortunately, that happens. Relationships where there's a person in power over those who aren't. So there can be things like sexual assaults. So we want people who are incarcerated to be safe. Since it's related to family members, she didn't have a chance to talk about Jeanette's children, but obviously, or I think clearly I thought she mentioned that the children have been communicating with her. So, and June was sitting there beforehand. We had to wait a few minutes because she was translating for people, translating Spanish to English, apparently, or vice versa, to someone who's incarcerated there. So they were on the phone taking a phone call. So the human rights aspect is certainly a concern. And how does this affect the family? Of course, they're worried about her. All of these people, and I haven't followed all of the interactions, but June has kept me updated about a lot of those. And there's, of course, very stressful worry that Jeanette might be deported without due process of law. And she didn't have all the legal, but there are legal rights that are being impacted. So there's obviously worries about mom leaving her four children who are older now. I think most of them, I don't know all the ages, but some are adults. But the legal rights, and there are things like on the National Lawyers Guild talks about knowing your rights, and the ACLU I think has there are guidelines for those who, and there some of these are in other languages, multiple languages. The Center for Constitutional Rights also talks about various rights of people who are immigrated and who are accused of illegally immigrating into the country, I should say, as well as protesters. So there are rights that you have. There are legal rights, and I'm glad that they're able to have a peaceful, nonviolent protest, even though these things are very concerning. And I think she was hitting upon Geo Group, which I don't have the statistics on, but have a contract with ICE, and they're making. I think the information, I don't have the source, but June had mentioned was $100 a day for each person that they have. So these kinds of facilities can make a lot of money and make profit. So when I worked in corrections, I worked in a private facility, and I know that some of the residents talked about human trafficking, which, because of the way that they're run for profit. So they're encouraged not to maybe provide the same. They might have requirements on the food, but they have to have oversight on the amount of food, the calories, and the composition of those meals. But the legal rights are probably a big concern right now. Or what are the rights? Because it sounds like maybe at this facility, but in the Miami or other facilities, there are people who are there much longer than Jeanette, who's been in there, I think, about a month. And so what are the rights of people? And there's some questions about that because I think that they had that on the news where the some of the people accused of being illegally in this country who weren't. It's been on the news on a couple of spots where the person over that Christie, former governor of South Dakota, who's overseeing that, had a $50,000 Rolex while she had some of the prisoners behind them. Apparently, some of those people had resident alien cards and so on. So there are issues, and because they had tattoos, some of them had nothing to do with any gang activity. So at this point, there's consciousness raising as well as desires to make changes. I don't have to repeat that back, but I think they're asking for accountability on these issues, as well as we're going to run out of time here, so we don't want to go too long, and we have already gone over time. So, wow, that went really fast. So June was at the facility in Aurora, the ICE facility. And this is the podcast is doing time outside the fence. There's just a lot going on here, and June's is pair up side by side. And I appreciate June doing this live, wearing out her battery on her phone because she was probably very active with the phone calls and then recording with us today. So anyway, this is March 31st, 25, excuse me. And thank you for joining us, and hopefully become more aware of the issues going on, and then family members who need support, and that there are a lot of people willing to support in a variety of ways. So, and hopefully June will put a number of those in the comments. So thank you of the podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.